A Gathering of Gargoyles by Meredith and Pierce. Chapter 8. The Painted Girl. The elders of the village kindly received them. They were given food and a place to sleep, and no questions until they wished to answer. They repaid their hosts with tumbling and juggling of dirks. Ariel told the village children tales, forgetting all else for a little while in that dreamy serenity. It seemed they might linger as long as they liked, yet gradually Ariel felt her strength returning. The peace and contentment of that Zambulian village trickled away. The maiden's rhyme came back to her. Time began to hang heavy. Orm beckoned. Ariel knew she must be on her way again. 1 hour, she arose from where she sat. Her gargoyle lay dozing beside her staff. She gathered her things and whistled to Grayling. On the shady side of the village square, villagers stood, grinding nutmegs into flour. Galnor and Nat sat nearby, juggling on cracked nuts. Ariel went to them. She put her traveling cloak on, slung her pack from one shoulder. "I must go," she said. "I have stayed too long." The day-month was already a quarter gone. Nat looked up, stopped juggling. "Where will you go?" "Westward, toward Terrain." You have kith there?" Ariel shook her head, refused to dwell on it. "I have no kith. Will you stay here?" Galnor answered. "I have people to northward, my grandmother's kith. Nat and I will stay here a little, then go." Ariel bent and kissed him on the cheek, as was custom at parting in Terrain. Then Nat. "Good journey, then." But as she made to turn away, Nat pressed something into her hand. "Take this," she said. Ariel looked down, saw in her hand Nat's ivory-handled dirk. "I can't," she began, but the blue-skinned girl would not take it back. "I took it off one of the Arlish bandits in Talis," she said. "He said he would give me a silver coin if I juggled a dozen spoons at once. I did, but he only laughed and gave me nothing, so I took it. But it is too large for my hand. It might fit yours." Ariel put it carefully away. She kissed the blue-skinned girl again, then went on to find the elders of the village to take her leave of them before she set out on the road. She wandered westward across Zambul. Though the countryside was mountainous still, the hill crests rose much lower than the high steeps of Bern. Sometimes she performed in exchange for food tasteless smooth bean cheese, persimmons coppery and tart, or coarse sweet cakes of oak apple flour. She passed rocky meadows of nibbling goats. Sometimes she saw beaters harvesting wild grain, or berry pickers, or goose girls tending their flocks. Gleaners gathered deadwood from the holts, but nowhere did she pass any running streams. The people seemed to draw their water from wells. Water sellers stood at crossroads, offering dippers to travelers for a price. Ariel had to sing for drink as well as food. Everywhere she stopped, Ariel told her tales. The heron sat wooden upon her staff. The little dust shrimp ran along her arms when she played the bandolin to the villagers' delight. They called the gargoyle her great gray dog. The land continued very poor and dry, but nowhere ravaged, as had been the haunt woods of Bern. Then 1 hour, when the day-month was nearly 3/4 gone, she came upon a blackened hillside, the twigs of the bushes brittle and curled. The whole place smelled scorched. Ariel stood a moment gazing at it. The gargoyle whined, pacing restlessly. Ariel quieted it, then continued down the road and across the narrow vale. She asked the boy tending kid goats on the opposite hillside what had caused the damage, and he, looking up from the wooden flute he was piping, shrugged. "Angel slept there a few day-months past." Ariel felt a coldness glide across her back. "The Dark Angel of Bern ranges so far?" But the boy shook his head. "Not Bern's, our own." Ariel shook her head, not understanding. "There's a Dark Angel on Zambul?" The boy nodded indifferently. "But your land is fair," said Ariel. "No blight twists the trees." The goatherd glanced across the vale. "There's blight." "But the whole of Bern, near half I saw, was blighted because of their Dark Angel." The boy laughed scornfully. "That's because theirs lies only in one spot. Day-month on day-month, year after year, lets his poison gather and spread. There's a stupid Dark Angel, spoils his own hunting grounds." Ariel began to speak, but the boy was looking off. Hardly anyone but thieves left in Bern now because of it. The babes die, they say, and the children die, and before another 60 years there'll be no one left in Bern at all. But, Ariel started, if you too have an Icarus, how is it Zamble remains? Whole? The boy asked her. Hale, not half so whole, or hale as it was before he came. 50 years he's been here. But he never lies in the same place twice. Do you see? The taint can't take hold. The boy sat fingering his flute, not looking at her. And if the spot where he settles is blighted, in a year or 2 years it begins to come back. Meantime, we keep our kine away. None of us go there, so we don't die, as they do in Bern or miscarry. Ariel felt lost, too astonished to speak. She had thought Zamble was clean of the witch's sons. The gargoyle howled suddenly, and the boy's kids upon the hill started and bunched. Odds, hold your dog, the goat herd cried. Ariel quieted the gargoyle, turned back to the boy. He had settled into his place again. The kids nibbled at their scrub. But a dark angel must hunt, she said at last. None of the people I have met here seem to move in fear or speak with loathing of the night. No walls surround the villages, no bolts around the doors. How can your people feel safe? Ah, the boy smiled, blowing a few sweet, shrill notes on his pipe. It is because we treat with our dark angel. Ariel knelt below him on the rough hillside. How do you mean? Wherever he is settled to wait out the day, the people thereabouts know it from the shriveling of the trees and the stink of rot, so they cast lots by household, and whatever house draws the bad lot must give one of its own to the vampire, by nightshade. Simple. Ariel felt her throat closing. A little breeze traced against her cheek, but her chest was too tight to take any in. Grayling against her began to growl. She shook it to be still. The people of Zamble give up those of their households so willingly, she asked. The boy shrugged. Some willingly, some not. What matter as long as the angel leaves? He has his fill and flies away. Doesn't trouble the same place again for years. Ariel shook her head. She felt hollow and realized she had not eaten in half a dozen hours. Who goes to the dark angel? She asked the boy. Daughters, the goatherd told her. Sons, newborn babes or criminals, strangers. No sick or moribund, no old people unless they are vigorous, but mostly the ones that fall to the Icarus are slaves. Ariel shook her head again, trying to quell the panic which rose within her. Slaves? I have seen no slaves in Zamble. The boy looked up from his flute. Haven't you? In all the towns you've played in, half us common folk are debt-bound to the high ones. Have to buy water, don't we? And the rich ones own the wells. They're the ones with money to buy real slaves, too, rose-skinned ones, out of Ronnie, or golden skins of Avaric, or blue ones out of Bern. White ones, too, I suppose, he said suddenly, eyeing Ariel again. Where is it you're from? Terrain, she said. He laughed, tossing the hair out of his eyes. It lay yellow against his light green skin. Terrain, he said. Then you know of slaves. Ariel stood up. Go on, she said. You were telling me about the high ones and their slaves? And the lots, the boy answered, smiling. The bad ones seem to fall mostly to the rich, don't they? I don't say how. What's it to them? They grumble, true, but they don't give up their daughters or sons, or even their good servants, do they? Just tie the surliest young Oddskin to a tree near the blight where the angel lies, and go home again. Leave that one to the dark. The light, dry wind brought the stench of the blasted hillside back for a moment then. Ariel felt dizzy. Her stomach clenched. She raised the hood of her traveling cloak against the sun. The goatherd gave a sudden cry, started to his feet, staring at her. Ariel glanced at herself, then back at the boy, who now cast his gaze back and forth over the hillside as if searching for something. He seemed to be looking straight through her. Ariel turned away and started down the slope. She did not understand what he was doing and did not care. The gargoyle trotted after her. She heard the goatherd behind her cry out, Sorceress! And glancing back, she saw him hurriedly shooing his kid goats uphill and away. She found rose spears growing wild along the roadside farther on and filled the inner pocket of her robe with them. But their taste cloyed, noisome in her mouth. She ate them anyway. The dust shrimp took tidbits. Nothing was wrong with the fruit. Ariel sang for her supper in the next village she came to and had enough coin left to buy a small water flask, but she did not stay. If they do not scruple to give up their slaves to the dark, she thought, how much easier simply to hand over some passing stranger. She traveled on, raising the hood of her cloak. She played at bandolin for her food and drink, but never again slept in any village. She passed more blighted hillsides. They seemed to come more closely together after a time, so that when Solstar hung low, perhaps 3 hours from setting, she found herself murmuring, I thought the boy said this dark angel never roosts long in one place, but that blasted heath we just skirted makes the third such we have seen in 2 hours walking. She stroked the gargoyle's mangy fur, gazed off into the trees. They were walking along a wooded stretch. Well, perhaps it does not like the fare it has received hereabouts, and so stays to exhort better. Before she had even finished her words, she heard a creaking of laughter like a rusty hinge. Looking up, surprised, she saw an old woman standing just off the road, bent nearly double beneath a load of sticks. Well, maid, she cackled, you have murmured truer than perhaps you know. All these lands belong to the Magus. The bad lot fell to him 3 months gone. Ariel halted. Did he refuse? Refuse! The old woman cried. Bah! Never tried and tried. 3 times now, going on 4, to feed the winged fiend. Only the angel is not satisfied. Why is that? The bent woman heaved the bundle of sticks from her back and straightened a bit. Have you any water about you, maid? Ah, how the gathering does make one dry. Ariel handed her flask, and the other drank greedily, then wiped her mouth upon her sleeve and handed the empty vessel back to Ariel. She tugged peevishly at her bundle, as though it had suddenly become too heavy to lift. Don't trouble yourself, said Ariel, balancing the load upon her hip. Will you give me the tail? The gatherer's lined face cracked once more into a smile. My cottage lies this way, she said. I might as well talk upon the way as not. Come along. And we'll pause there.